Well, welcome to another edition, another fun edition of Lessons from the Sidelines. I'm Tom Crean, and we do this as part of the Harbaugh Coaching Academy that my brother-in-laws John and Jim had put together, really to honor the legacy of my father-in-law and their father, Jack Harbaugh. And what it's done is it's turned into something that's a lot of fun, and it gives us a chance to hear from some outstanding leaders, some outstanding people, that it's all in a way of how does this impact the people that listen in a way that they can use. And I love it. And today we have a person that is an outstanding leader, outstanding in the game or in the Major League Baseball, a really good friend of mine, without question, somebody that I have tremendous respect for. And if you knew about him before this podcast, great. If you didn't, you're going to want to learn more. And I think this podcast will show that. And I want to welcome from the Chicago White Sox, Assistant General Manager Nick Hostetler. Nick, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Coach. I really appreciate it.
You wear a lot of different hats in your time with the White Sox and really in your time with Major League Baseball. And I want to ask this first question because I think it's so big. What is it like to wake up every day with a role of helping put together a Major League Baseball team?
It's a dream come true for me. When I was growing up in Sterling, Ohio, when I was a little and small town, we didn't have a stoplight in our town, and my grandpa would come home from third shift and grab me after he'd sleep a little bit and go throw batting practice to me. And my dad would coach me in games in the evening. For me to have even a small thought of being associated with a Major League Baseball club at the age of 47 now, and this is starting my 26th year. I don't know. I'd be lying to you if I told you I thought it would happen. But to be able to wake up every morning, have my feet hit the floor, and take a big breath and thank the man upstairs for all that he's given me and given me this opportunity. I can't tell you how much it means to me.
Well, and again, you've worn so many hats, and we're going to cover some of it, but really I want to just cover the whole business of baseball evaluation, of leadership, of what makes a great manager, what makes a great player, the makeup of it, and we'll get into that. But now as we do this, spring training has started. So the people's love of baseball now has something that they can see. The games will start soon. What is a typical day now when you're in spring training and you do so much, and I'm going to let you explain it, but so much evaluating of other teams, of other players, not only of people that are younger players, but people, how they would fit with the White Sox. What's a typical day like for you when you're in spring training, especially when you're down evaluating teams in Florida?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll handle pretty much everything from Sarasota down to Fort Myers for us. I think it's 6 clubs. And, for me, it's really important to continue the relationships I have through media, front office personnel, different people around the stadium, club personnel, but also at the same time continue to grow that network of people that I rely on to help me and to help me understand what makes a player tick and the certain things that I'm going out and evaluating for. So, I'll start and try to get out to the ballpark about 8:30 in the morning. Just kind of hang around. I'll watch a lot of backfield work. So I'll watch a lot of batting practice, a lot of individual work. Gives me an opportunity, one, to see some younger players that possibly aren't playing in the game that day or are in minor league camp. But it'll also give me an opportunity to see those big league guys, see how they work, see what they do, see what their process is, day in, day out, how they get themselves ready, not only for that day, but also for the season. Also gives me an opportunity to see these players interact. I get to see them interact with not only their teammates, their coaches, but I also get to see them interact with fans and people, and just to see who they are as individuals, because ultimately, with what we are able to do now from a data and analytics standpoint, as scouts, we have to bring something to the table that can't. And for me and for the rest of our staff, it's going and trying to explain to our front office and to our big league staff how these guys would fit in with our clubhouse, how they'll fit in with our culture and our beliefs as an organization. So it's really important for me to get those that time in the morning out at camp and see that interaction. And then it takes it right into the game. We usually have a 1 o'clock game, sometimes an evening game, and then at night we try to wrap up. And when the game's over, I'll try to meet up with whether it be friends that I have from other organizations, media members, whoever it may be that day. We'll try to grab a bite to eat, and we'll sit and talk and share ideas, share thoughts about different things with our club, with their club, and try to get as much information as I possibly can.
In this day and age, how do you keep your notes, put your forms together, move them forward to other people in the organization? What's that like when you're spending so much time and you're really in the moment? You're evaluating, you're seeing things, it's alive. How do you go about that, and when do you get that done?
So I was always a pen and paper guy, and I still, to an extent, I am. I like feeling the pen on the paper and writing it down. And if you look at my notebook, half of it you probably can't read, and the other half is shorthand. So, but I have started to transition over to the iPad, and that's given me an opportunity to, have that there at my fingertips. If the front office calls me and we're working on a deal and I'm at the ballpark, I can pull up my reports right there in front of me. That information can be sent to them immediately. So we have an amazing system with the White Sox that we're able to enter notes right into. So if I see something at a game, something that may stick out from a makeup standpoint, a personality standpoint, or rumors I'm hearing, stuff like that, I can go right into our system, enter that in right at the ballpark in my iPad, and that gets it to our front office immediately, so they have it. It's been a huge help for me over the course of the last 5-6 years to transition to that.
I think that's so cool in the sense that, and we're going to hit a lot of things that I'm not sure everybody realizes about evaluation, like what you said, being there so early, about how early this starts. But when you're putting this together, basically, if you're evaluating me as a player along with the other people you're seeing that day, and then 3 days later, somebody else from the organization sees me, there's basically a running tab on what they think of me personally or the other players, and it just continues to be basically a case study on each individual. Is that right?
Correct. Spot on. It's something that, and I think we take a lot of pride in, and it's something also when you're sitting in a GM's chair or a director of player acquisition chair, whatever that may be. You want that track record. You want to be able to see to paint the picture and put the pieces together to see how that trail has led to the point we're in. So when we're talking about acquiring a player, there will be notes back and reports back from when the player was in high school, or even possibly an international sign where he was 14 years old. And, the player might be 35 now. And we've got 20 years worth of reports and information that is piled up in our system that Chris gets and his staff can go back, log right in, it's right at his fingertips, and he has everything available.
And that's a great lead into my next point. How young on basically, whether it's the international game, whether it's the American game, how young do you really start keeping tabs on a player? When does the evaluation process start?
I've had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with David Keller, our international director, and his staff down in the Dominican Republic as recently here as last week or 2 weeks ago. And we see some young players. We've seen some guys that are 12, 13 years old that we start the process on. They've already started. The area scouts down there know. David's done an unbelievable job of revamping our entire international system and really surrounding and putting into place a system that I know Chris and his staff are really in Chicago are really excited about, because we now have that information trail starting at the age of 12 or 13 years old on these players. And really in the international system, the way that it's set up where you can sign a player at 16 years old, the process starts earlier than what it does domestically. Domestically, a lot of times we'll see some players, some of our area scouts will see players in the 9th grade and start that process with follow reports on them. But as far as getting down to the brass tacks and evaluating them for draft purposes, usually it starts the summer before their junior year.
And so when you're seeing players in a major league camp that maybe they're 23, 24, 25 now, you've been possibly seeing them since they were 13, 14 years of age.
Oh, for sure.
And the bottom line, I think this is important for people to understand. Every day is a evaluation process in itself, of its own. And it just builds up into this one big, long story. And I'm not sure people understand that. When you're evaluating a prospect now, that let's say he's in that major league camp, how much do you go back and really dive into what you saw before or what others had seen before as you go through the process of evaluating the player, evaluating the makeup, evaluating the upside?
You know, my own personal process, and I know a lot of the pro scouts do the same thing when they're in there and seeing a player or a team. Is once we go, I like to see the player first with my own eyes. I don't want to be biased. I don't want to have any judgment of outside noise or anything when I'm evaluating the player. So when I go in and see the player, and I see him in that particular setting, I'll then go back that night and I'll take a look at all of the data, all of the analytic points that we have that can help me put together the pieces of that puzzle. So then I'll start digging into the background. I'll start digging into the past. Now, it's hard a lot of times because we do have so much history with these players from my own personal standpoint, and seeing some of these guys, you know, when they were 16 years old. So it's hard to go in with a clear mind of, you know, not letting what you've seen in the past dictate what you're seeing now. But you really want to try to go in and see that fresh, get a new look, because players change. And there's so many situations where players, they improve, they go backwards for whatever reason those may be. But to give that player a fresh, clean look each year, one is only right by our organization and doing the best job we possibly can, but also it's fair to the player and giving him an opportunity to show you here in this setting this year, hey, this is what I am. So now when I go back and I look at the past and I look at all of the data and I start putting these pieces together, pull in all the video work to see what changes they've made, it gives me a fresh perspective, and I feel very confident in my evaluation of what I can give to the White Sox right now and what that player is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And really where I want to go with this, and we're going there, is for people to understand, you know, irregardless if it's baseball, another sport, if it's business, if it's education, there is such an ongoing look at people, you know, once you dive in. And every day to this matters. In one area that I think you've been ahead of the game, and me knowing you for a long time with this, has been the way you work on background. And we could spend a whole episode on background. But I know I've utilized you in the past in my coaching to check on certain areas, to check on somebody, their background, and you knew people in law enforcement.
Yeah.
Throughout the country, right?
Yep.
And I've also seen the work that you've done when it comes to social media and how you dive in and how others dive in. And it's fascinating to me, you know, and I'm in the same business of sports, but it's absolutely fascinating to me how deep you guys go. And I know it's the same way with the NFL and most likely with the NBA and NHL as well. But what are the biggest things that you want to make sure when you're diving into that background that you have got a complete handle on no matter what?
I think the big thing for me, and it's funny because as I've evolved over the last 26 or so years that I've been in the game, I still revert back to some of the stuff that I've learned day one. And were just pounded in me when I was a part-time scout with the Atlanta Braves and sitting with Paul Snyder or Dayton Moore or J.J. Piccolo or Brian Bridges, Lonnie Goldberg, those guys. And we would sit there and just listen and be sponges for this information. I'm 21 years old, and this is the stuff that I'm still using to this day. And the big thing for me, and it still sticks out for me, something that Paul Snyder said with Bobby Cox that day was, when the off-field makeup starts affecting the on-field play, then we've got a problem. And that on-field play can be affected by affecting others in the clubhouse. It can be affecting that player and what they're doing off the field, whether it be social media interactions, comments that have been made, how they live their lives, just certain situations. But also at the same time, it helps me understand the person a little bit more. Because look, bottom line, even though we're all different people, we're all different human beings, we all do different things that in our lives that maybe I wouldn't do that you would do, or vice versa, whatever it may be. But that's what makes that person tick. And so my goal is when we start digging into these things is I want to make sure that I know if I'm recommending a player for us to acquire via trade or free agency, I want to make sure I know what that player does and what makes him tick. how he's going to fit in with our clubhouse. And I want to make sure that nothing he's done in his past can affect what we've built currently in our clubhouse. That's the last thing you want to do is bring somebody in that's going to just poison the clubhouse. And all of a sudden, we're in a situation where we've got young players, a great core, and it's poisoned because of someone we've brought in because of not doing enough homework and background and knowing what might happen with that player in his past. So it's something that, again, in this day and age, I know I brought it up before, but there's so many data points and there's so many things we can use from a performance standpoint, these are types of things from a non-performance standpoint that scouts, front office personnel, whatever it may be, can rely on to help make sure we're bringing in the right person to fit with our group.
Sure. And I think people forget, like, this is not a deal where you make a mistake on a player and millions of dollars are spent on that player that you can file an insurance claim and get recovery on the money, right? Like, this is real life. You use the money. And I want to stay with this a little bit because what I've learned from you is you dive early into the social media part, into the off the field stuff, because the penchant when players get involved with agents and they start to figure this out, well, you know what, if they've got some bad stuff on there, they scrub it. They scrub their social media. And I think I've seen this in basketball. People think they can go back and clean up their messes. Not on the best teams. The best teams are there long before you realize that you've made a mistake. Can you give an example where you dug into, not and don't name a player obviously, but where you dug into someone that was probably a top 3 or 4 pick, in the draft, but you said, like, there's no way we can do this. This is too risky.
Yeah. There was a high school player, pitcher, probably back in the it's probably about 2010 to 15 range that we had a strong interest in, dug into him, started getting into the background, who he associated himself with, had our area scouts spend a lot of time just around the school asking questions, asking teachers or people that were interacting with him on a daily basis. He asked the cafeteria workers, people just that he would interact with daily about who he was as a person, and everything kept coming back the same. Arrogant, entitled, rude, those types of things. And we started digging into the social media and found a lot of questionable actions on this kid's part. It magically disappeared. It's just as you referenced, it magically disappeared about 2 months before the draft. But we had it 6 months before. And we started hearing some rumors about it. Some other clubs started hearing rumors about it. And it's one of those things that, when I talk about the network of people that you build up and the trust that you have with other scouts or media members or whatever it may be, these things can kind of help you accomplish that and know that, hey, there's some smoke here. We got to find out if it's fire or not. And we found out it was fire in that, and at that point he came off the board. There was no reason for us to take that risk at that point, because if we take that player in the first round, this affects us for 5 years, because now we've wasted a first round draft pick. It's just like a free agent. If we sign a free agent or make a trade for a player right now, so let's say he's a high dollar free agent, that might not just hurt us in that year, that might hurt us for 3, 4, 5 years to come, because we've got money tied up into him, and now we've got dead money that we can't then spend and help our club get better.
And that's a great point. That's what people forget, dead money,
Yeah.
right? Like that kills your franchise.
Kills it.
And people don't think about that. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's lessons from the sidelines, and it's not only the lessons, but it's things that people can learn that they can apply that a lot of times they don't think about. And it's not just the sports. It's the businesses, like we said, the companies that are diving into that college student that's applying for a job, and they are diving in.
Yep.
And so many decisions get made off social media and those type of areas. Where just for the purpose of people to understand how deep this goes, what are the biggest areas you're diving into in the social media? Obviously, we have X or Twitter. We have Facebook. We have Instagram. But what else?
Snapchat, Instagram, all of those that you mentioned.
You can get Snapchat.
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
Even TikTok.
Most people would never know that.
Yeah, even TikTok now has become something.
Yep.
And it's continuing to grow. And there are so many avenues now for people to give their opinion outwardly to everybody. And that's the thing that when these kids are young, I don't think they quite grasp, is that when they press that button and hit send, the whole world knows it. And it's there forever. Whether they want to scrub it, they don't want to. It's there forever. It's not going away. It's going to find you. And as you know, Coach, I used to coach middle school basketball, and that was the first thing in the offseason when I coached these teams. I would talk to these kids about 6th, 7th, 8th graders. Is you're going to make a decision as a 6th grader to hit send on a tweet or on an Instagram post or comment on something that may be completely, you think it's completely harmless. That might follow you when you're 24 years old in a job interview. And those types of things that parents, and it's hard being a parent nowadays with all of these social media avenues, and kids have so many different ways of communicating now. But at the same time, like, as parents, it's scary. And I know you know that. I know that we're both parents, and it's scary because you don't want to see your kid ruin an opportunity that they work their butt off for when they're in the 6th grade. And unfortunately, it happens. And, the things that we dig into on a daily basis, our amateur staff does, and now, I know our pro staff, we dig into it before we make a deal. There are so many phone calls and boxes that are checked. Gene Watson, our director of player personnel, goes through every piece of information possible. And we put that together and have to feel comfortable with the player we're bringing in. And, it's sad when something like that happens at such a young age. It affects that later down the road.
Absolutely. I mean, and I just think this is fascinating because I think so many people think it's not going to happen to them. They can outrun it, okay? They can outwork it. But when you make these kind of mistakes, they're going to follow you. And you are not in the business of there's not a lot of forgiveness, for a pro franchise that doesn't win, right? We already know there's no recouping of the money. But the bottom line is it digs so deep. And we could spend a lot of time on that, but this is really fascinating. And I want to hit another area that I think people don't understand how important this is in the process. We had an NFL GM come in one time at Indiana, and he was a friend of mine, and he'd been a director of personnel before he was a GM, but he got there for the warm-ups, and he told the guys, when I had him speak to the team, he said, I could have probably got the film from Coach if I wanted to watch the practice. He said, I can watch all your games on television. What I can't see is what you're like before the camera goes on. What I can't see is what you're like when you come out on the court if I'm not here. This is what I saw in 15 minutes before practice started. And he started to ring off things to our players that he would be evaluating at a football practice or getting out early to a football game that's not on camera. And I think, man, that was an eye-opening moment for me. I know it was for our team. There's so much that's on video that you can get easy now. And you can find things. But the stuff that isn't on video is what separates the good from the great. Give an example of what you're really looking for when you get, or some examples, when you get out to a ballpark early and batting practice hasn't maybe started officially yet, or they haven't opened the doors. I see this all the time doing college basketball games. The NBA guys will be there an hour and a half. They'll be there when the doors open. NFL, they're all over the field, before the game starts or at the practice early. What are you looking for?
I want to see, number one, I want to see how they carry themselves. That's number one. I want to see how they walk onto that field. Do they own it? Does this guy believe in who he is as a human being? Body language is huge for me. When we're evaluating and we see body language, it's huge because when you step into that batter's box and you're 60 feet 6 inches away from a guy that's going to be throwing 102 miles an hour and a 92 mile an hour slider, you better have some confidence. And I want to see that. I want to see how they go about their business prior to the game to get ready for that game. Preparation for the game now is just as important as anything that these players do. I want to see if they're out there with their teammates, how they're interacting with their teammates. And I've seen so many different situations where you watch a player and he's going from teammate to teammate to teammate. He's not paying attention to anything that's going on. He's not taking extra ground balls. He's not taking extra swings. He's not working off the tee, whatever it may be. He gets in the game, he goes 0 for 4 with 2 punch-outs, and he's banging the crap out of the dugout with his bat. Well, hey, if you put the work in beforehand, that's going to translate at some point. So those are the types of things I want to see before a game. Is I want to see how that player goes about his business, and is it his life? Because we sit here and you've got to live this game, whatever game you're in. It's your profession, and it's no different that if I'm working at McDonald's and in the corporate offices, and I go in and half my day spent on the computer looking at ESPN and basketball scores. I'm not giving my full effort to McDonald's that day. So I want to see that with that player every single day when I walk out there. And I'll see a 5 to 6 game series in the minor leagues, and I want to see it each day. And it's getting harder. A lot of teams don't take nearly as much in and out now than what they did. Batting practice on the field is a little bit more limited than what it used to be. But I want to see if that guy's out there and he's working. And there will be guys that you'll see all the time. There'll be some guys you never see. And then I go down to the coach and say, hey, Joe Smith, whether he went out for BP today, what's going on? He beats to his own drum. He likes his own style. He doesn't listen to coaching. Boom. I got information that can help us. And if we're looking to acquire that player, then I know that, hey, our coaches are going to have a little bit of a battle here.
Yeah, that's a heck of a point. Let's go over the 5 tools, and which is a big part of baseball, and there's different grading systems. But I think it's also important that, especially with as young as you start, right, that you're seeing a level of improvement that's constantly. So for our viewers, what's a 5-tool player? What are those tools?
It's hit for average, hit for power, run tool, arm strength, and field grade. All of those have different weights depending on what position it is. So a corner, third base, first base, corner outfield, you're going to want more hit and power out of them. You're up the middle guys, you're going to want more speed, more glove. But I will say the bat is number one. Regardless of what it used to be, if you can hit, we're going to try to find a spot for you on the field. But those are the 5 main tools that we're evaluating every day.
So when you're measuring those and you have your numbers, again, with that whole system, you're continuing to look for that level of improvement in guys. What are some red flags that you might see in an evaluation process? We're looking strictly now at the tools of the player, not necessarily the makeup, but of the tools of the player. Because I think what happens a lot of times, especially in sports, young people, they hit a level that they think they're pretty good. And especially in this transfer portal world and this NIL world that so many colleges, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball, and they get very comfortable with what they've done from who they've learned it from. And I don't want to say they go on autopilot, but they almost lose sight of no matter what, you have to keep getting better. And it gets harder when you move to another place. So what are those types of red flags that you look at in evaluation?
I think one of the first things that usually jumps out when a guy gets, and I guess you could use the word complacent or comfortable, is a lot of times the first thing we tend to see is the feet slow down. The body gets a little bit thicker in the lower half, not as focused on health and performance and from a body standpoint. And those things you start to see, and sometimes age is part of that, but you can see that. You can see the work that guys put in the off season, and that translate. When I start spring training here in 2 days, like it'll be really easy and a real easy tell for me to see who put in the work in the off season and who didn't. A lot of time, and I reference feet a lot with our evaluation because it is the foundation, and it is something, whether that's basketball, soccer, football, whatever it may be, the feet are number one. The base is always number one for us. And, we see those feet start to slow down. It's like, hey, where's that lower half strength? Where's that core strength? So a lot of times it's just in that trunk that we start seeing that body start going south or slowing down a little bit. That's a red flag for us, because at the same time, like, baseball, there are some different shapes that play this game, and it works for them. But for a longevity standpoint, it's really hard to stay consistent and productive from a longevity standpoint if the health and overall well-being and fitness isn't there.
Yeah, we could spend, again, there's so many different episodes we could have with this, but I think, again, in this day and age, we're talking some analytics, but we're really talking about the eye test and the evaluation process and the ongoing process. And you've done a phenomenal job, and baseball does. I think the best franchises do the best job of having the best evaluators that understand the numbers, not just the people that read off the numbers. And I think that's any sport. But what's the key to being a great evaluator for all the people that are watching this, or a great leader, when it comes to trusting your eyes, but also looking at the numbers and knowing how to interpret them?
You have to be open-minded, and that's, for me, that's number one. If you think you know everything, regardless if you've been scouting for 30 years, played for 20 years, whatever it may be, you have to stay open-minded. This game changes rapidly, and if you're not willing to change with it and not incorporate different styles to your evaluation process, you're going to get left behind. And it is vitally important, and I completely agree with you that I think the best organizations have the excellent balance between the data points, the analytics, the R&D departments, and the scouting departments, because the wisdom and the experience that comes with the scouting part of it helps bridge that gap, and it helps marriage the two. And it's one of the things that I think that we've been so proud of here with the White Sox here, that we've really built up our R&D department, but at the same time the communication between both departments are amazing. And it's something that is our daily process. It's something that we have to use in our evaluations every single day to make sure we're giving the front office our complete picture of what that player is.
No, those are tremendous points. And as we stay in this part of it, I want to jump to this. One time I went to see the St. Louis Cardinals and Tony La Russa play against his good friend, Jim Leland. And it was my father-in-law and I were up there. Mike McCarthy, who's now the coach of the Steelers, a good friend of ours from Milwaukee named Dick Strong. We were on the field before the game, and Jim Leland, it was my first time meeting him. Well, maybe it was the second time meeting him. But long story short, he said, "You want my definition of leadership?" He said, "Go watch Albert Pujols take batting practice." He said, "You want another definition of leadership? Go watch Chris Carpenter throw the bullpen before the game." And that always stuck with me because he was talking about his opponents that night, right? And when I say that to you, okay, if I say, okay, what's your definition of leadership right now in Major League Baseball of somebody that's in the field and carries the non-pitcher? How would you answer that?
If you can sit and watch, and I was blessed to have the opportunity to cover the World Baseball Classic a few years ago in Miami, and to watch those guys in one spot, and I was able to walk out onto the field and watch Mookie Betts, and I was able to stand there and see Shohei Ohtani, and to watch the work that they put in. They're not, as much as it looks like they're just up there swinging as hard as they can, trying to hit balls as far as they can. It is an approach. They're going step by step to get themselves ready for that game. And, with Tony and Jim Leland, and I've had the blessing to get to know both of them over the course of the last few years, and to listen to those guys talk about the Albert Pujols, the Miguel Cabreras, the Justin Verlanders, those types of guys that they've been around. I mean, everything they're saying is exactly what you see. And if you could have a young player just sit and watch Mookie Betts take his first round of BP the opposite way, drive balls the opposite way. Second round, he's hitting line drives up the middle. Third round, he's turning and showing some power. And it's like there's a plan there. It's not just getting in the box. I'm going to swing as hard as I can and let it rip. You watch a guy throw a bullpen. He's hitting his spots. He's making sure that he has full command of all of his pitches. And this is a side day. This isn't even the day that they're going out and performing in front of millions and millions of people.
It's so good, and I don't want to miss. There's so many questions I have, but I don't want to miss these. You've been around so many. You're an excellent mentor and leader, but you've also been very blessed to be around some. All right, and I want to throw some names at you, and have you give maybe one big thing, the first thing that comes to your mind about why they were successful as they are. And I'm going to start with one of your first peers with the or people that you really looked up to with the Braves, Paul Snyder.
The greatest. I mean, he for me, Scouting Hall of Fame doesn't start unless Paul Snyder's in it.
Interesting.
Everything he did for me from day one shaped who I am today.
Dayton Moore.
Professional, no nonsense, but compassionate. He is one of the most compassionate people, and I had the opportunity at the Brave Scout School to meet with him the last night we were leaving, and he said, if we offer you this part-time job, you got to promise me you're going to get your degree, number one, and number two, you got to promise me you're going to work your ass off. And I said, I'll promise you I'll get both. Took me a little while in the degree. I got it for him, but I promised him that I'd do that for him.
You did. You kept working through it as busy as you were.
I did.
Here's a legendary name, Roland Heeman.
Roland has done so much for people, and he did so much for not only scouts, but people. There were certain things that Roland did that nobody even knew about. He had a scholarship set up with the University of Phoenix for scouts and front office people to apply for, to pay to help finish their college. Roland didn't publicize those types of things. Just a caring person that really wanted to help you regardless of who you were, whenever that time was. He didn't care what your title was. Roland was going to help you.
Your boss and leader, Chris Getz.
Chris and I have had, it's funny because when Chris came over as the farm director, I still remember the first night we sat down and had dinner at a Mexican place in Phoenix, in Glendale. And we started talking then, and you knew real quickly how intelligent he was. But the intelligence part of it, coupled with his experience on the field, is what's going to make him so successful. He is a very passionate leader. He's someone that is very direct, to the point. He's very honest. And he's someone that I've really enjoyed working with him and getting to know him here in the last 5-6 years we've been together.
Here's another one that's played as leadership, and he's on the Mount Rushmore of White Sox in my mind. Jim Thome.
Jimmy was, when I grew up in Cleveland, he was my favorite player. And to have the opportunity to even be around him professionally with the White Sox was amazing. But this guy was offering to help me do anything. He would go out and see players for us. He would scout, still does it, still scouts to this day. He's in full uniform in spring training out there right now with the hitters. When people say that, Gentleman Jim is his nickname, and when people say that, it is truly 100% real. He's as authentic, and it's hard to find a better human being than what Jim Thome is.
Yeah, it's impressive. I'm going to close with one, but I got a few more. First manager you were around, Bobby Cox.
Bobby Cox was intimidating for me because I spent a little bit of time in Orlando my first year scouting around Disney World where we had spring training at the time, and he'd walk by and he had that limp and that kind of the gruff voice a little bit, but he was intimidating. But at the same time, you knew it was greatness because you saw all the players how they responded to him, and even the greats. I mean, the Maddoxes, the Chippers, those guys. Like, just to see him follow him and just wanting to be around him, you're like, yeah, that's a manager. Like, that's a big league manager.
Another guy that's in that same conversation, we mentioned Jim Leland, but guy we both love. I mean, it's an incredible friendship to have. But the legendary Tony La Russa.
Yeah, Tony. The one thing that I've really enjoyed the last few years at the winter meetings is getting to spend more time around Tony. People don't, Coach, you know this, but people don't understand how funny he can be. He'll crack a joke with the best of them, and he'll get you laughing. And it was a lot of fun when I was advanced scouting for the White Sox a few years ago to sit in those meetings with him in spring training, and he'd always have the last word. He was the guy the gatekeeper that got the last word in the meeting, and it was always something to get us laughing before we walked out of the room. But it's pretty easy to see why he's got HOF next to his name.
And the last one is I've been around him some. And my word would be unbridled loyalty this person has, and he's certainly misunderstood, from a media perspective and fan perspective at times. But I think that loyalty is incredible, and I know he means a lot to you. That's Jerry Reinsdorf.
Yeah, people have such a misconception of what Jerry is. He is as loyal is definitely. I mean, there's no question he is a loyal human being. But Jerry is very driven. And to think of a man at the age that he is, still coming into meetings, still, cutting it up with everybody. I had a great time. He knows I'm a huge basketball fan, so we were sitting in the winter meetings this year, and he looked at me and called me over, and he said, "Hey, what do you think if we made a trade for this guy?" And I won't say it because I don't want to get him in trouble, but and I kind of laughed at him, and I said, "Well, you're going to have to give up your whole team." And and he looked at me and he goes, "Spoken like a true fan." And and so we have a nice ongoing relationship, and I have such respect for him, what he's not only done publicly, but the stuff that he's done behind the scenes that people don't even know about. I don't know how you could say a bad word about the man if you would know everything that he is.
Absolutely, and I think that's important, and you've lived it. I got time for one last question. I wish I had more, but I'm going to ask this because part of our friendship has been we've built it over, like, we see the value of every sport, right? We see how things fit. We see the connections, and you have a great mind for it. There's no doubt about it. And if I asked you to leave our listeners, viewers, with one thing for their kids, for their team, for that aspiring player that is universal among all sports, all right, irregardless of the sport, that you have to make sure you do every day if you're going to be successful. So what would be part of that definition in your mind?
First and foremost, have fun with it. And it doesn't matter your talent level, doesn't matter who you are, what sport it is, you've got to enjoy doing it. And it's something that I saw with Riley when I got to see him play baseball. It's something I see with my son every day in basketball, and he's not even playing. But the love and the passion has to be there. You have to love this thing, whether it's baseball, basketball, life. You have to have this enthusiasm when you get up every day and you have the opportunity to do something that everybody in the world would love to do. You got to seize it and take it. And for me, to see young kids and players, whatever it may be, step onto the court or step onto the field, they're smiling, they're into it every day. Like, that gives me energy as someone that's evaluating them. And that makes me say, man, this guy loves what he does. And if he loves what he does, and I see that makes me feel even more confident in that person. So you got to love it. You got to love it, and you got to, and the other thing I would say is respect it. And I think sometimes the game can get to a point where now on social media and that we want to be cool and we want to do this and that, and it's disrespects the game. Respect the game. Respect the game, whatever you're playing. Respect those that came before you, and really just enjoy it.
Well, the things you've covered show that not only you better respect it, but you better understand it's a privilege and that you've got to get better at it and take care of it every day. And like you said, with having fun, I mean, whether you have energy and passion or not, you are certainly attracted to it because you can feel it when you see it in somebody else. So whether you have it or not, you're going to feel it's going to help you, right? And like you said, if you already have it, man, it just helps you that much more. If you don't have it, you're going to see it, and it impacts people. And I think that sounds simple, but it's really profound and it's really true, because there's too many people that go through this like it's a chore, like it's a job, like they'd rather do something else, like they don't love it, and they might be talented, but you're never, ever going to reach where you want to go if you're not having fun, if you don't respect it, and you don't understand how much you got to improve at it every day. So, Nick Hostetler, this has been fantastic. I knew it would be. I think people are going to love this, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Thank you. Anytime. I had an absolute blast. And
this is great. I knew this would be fun. So I'm Tom Crean. This is Nick Hostetler. This is Lessons from the Sidelines. We appreciate you tuning in. I think you're going to get a lot from it. Take care.